Today is Easter Sunday. We celebrate one of those very rare, never matched, never thought of phenomenon in the human history. Someone who was a human being walking on this earth died a natural death. Of course, it was a violent death, but it was a physical ending of life, comes back to life, resurrection of the dead. If you try to understand anything about Christianity, Christianity can never be thought of, never be imagined without the whole miracle or the mystery of resurrection. Today in the world, especially the young men and women, due to the influence of scientific rationalism most of the time, question, is it ever possible that someone who has died physically can ever rise to another life, come back to life, or go through a resurrection as we believe through the story of the Gospels? It's so much so that sometimes people who do not believe in the resurrection come to the argument that in the Gospels you have the weakest argument for the reality of resurrection, because it's only talking about the empty tomb, the stone rolled out, the clothes wrapped up, like what we find in the Gospel of John. But then again, even if we were to agree with them, the foundational question about the resurrection from the dead has also to be understood, dealt with, delved into, and also discussed only in terms of the mystery of life. You and I, if we don't have a reflection or a insight into the very deeply meaningful reality of human life, human body as it were, we will never be able to get a sense or to have an idea of the mystery of resurrection, because mysteries are not some things that you can never understand. As I have told you earlier, the Greek word mysterion implies that it is something that you can never fully understand. That means we can understand some of it, not all of it. So now, looking at the mystery of the human body, which we believe as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus from his dead, it is not necessarily the common Christian understanding of what we call Platonized Christianity, because Christian thinking was very heavily influenced by the Greek philosophical mind of Plato, because Plato's argument, he was living only about 400-500 years before the time of Jesus Christ. He preached, or he taught, that there is a soul, a pure soul, which was there before the time of birth, and that soul comes into our body during our lifetime at the point of birth, and the soul leaves us at the point of death, that is the physical death. And then after my death, it is my soul that goes back to God, or the creator, or the origins of the soul, or the super soul we might call it. But when you read the Gospels, we can see, especially the resurrection narratives, we can see that Jesus' resurrection was not just a rising of the soul, it was his body, because he ate and drank with his disciples. He moved from place to place with his disciples. And also you can see that the early Christian communities had a number of visions of this person who was raised from the dead. So therefore, we are talking about bodily resurrection as the gospel narratives present to us. As I told you earlier, because in order to understand the physical reality of the resurrection or the bodily resurrection, we need to see the mystery of body much more deeper. Now, the most modern or scientific argument for the presence of something way different from the physical reality of the human body came to the scientific world through the investigations of depth psychology, especially the arguments of Carl Jung and people who studied the human psyche. Now, Carl Jung, in his explanations or scientific investigations, he found that the human body, which is yours and mine, which the experience we have, that this human body has what we call consciousness. We are aware that we are people, we are aware that we are living, we are aware that we are scared of death, we are aware that we are on lockdown, we are aware that our lives have an end, that is death. So consciousness is something that we all are part of. We do know. We have a certain sense of consciousness. But his argument was that consciousness is something that comes from what you call the realm of the unconsciousness. Now, when you say the realm of unconsciousness, it is something that we can never understand. It is beyond our limitations of time. It is beyond our limitations of space. It is beyond our limitations of human understanding. It is something that is beyond. Now, how does he argue for the existence of unconsciousness being in control of consciousness? How does he bring it out? Now, for example, the simplest explanation or the example I can draw is the capacity of the human brain. Human brain is supposed to be the most complex biological organ in the entire cosmos. The human brain, we can never understand this completely. It is something beyond. For example, the great physicists, those who have studied this scientifically, people like Fred Hoyle and people who have studied this, they even say, when you think of the human body, the way that human body has evolved, even if you are to believe in the evolution of the whole cosmos and the human body, what they say is that it is completely unimaginable for a scientific person to imagine that this whole creation or this evolution of the human body happened without any reason. For example, Fred Hoyle, if I am not mistaken, he says the probability of the human body evolving into what it is today is something like you have a 1 meter object and you throw that from 2 billion light years away, and then you want to hit that object into a bullseye and it hits perfectly. The probability of the human body becoming what it is by natural processes of evolution is near impossible. Now, this is something not what I say, this is coming from the modern scientific investigation. There are people who argue for it, people who argue against it, but there is an argument to say that human body is something that is beyond our human comprehension. That is one. Now, coming back to people like Carl Jung, now what he says is that the human body which you and I have has what you call the human psyche, which is not an organ. It is not to be found in the body as a specific biological organ. It is there, but also it is not there. Through this whole presence of the human psyche within the body, that you and I can see a dream in the night when we fall asleep. And through that dream, there is that possibility in so many people who can see something that is going to happen in a few days' time or in about a month's time. That is one. The second is that there are people who have this capacity within themselves, in the human brain, within its own limitations. They capture what you call abstract truths, like mathematical truths. For example, if you study the history of mathematics, you can see that it is not through just consciously evolving mathematical equations that we have come up with all these scientific discoveries. For example, if I am to make it as simple as possible, we say in mathematics 1 plus 1 is 2. So now when we say 1 plus 1 is 2, with that abstract truth which somebody has just captured through one's own human brain, through one's speculation, you can apply the same mathematical truth and build buildings, build bridges, develop aeroplanes, and aeronautics engineering, all these mathematical truths are ones which human persons with a human body, with the presence of the human psyche, they have come to that experience of something that is within your body, but it has no physical limitations. Unexplainable energies, unexplainable capacities, unexplainable potentialities are there in the human body. Now, when you accept the fact that human body has these unexplainable potentials and the energies and the presence of the psyche, or whatever we may call it, the name doesn't matter so much, whether it is the soul or it is the psyche or whatever we may call it, that energy, that presence of the psyche has so much of capacity to take your body and heal it. Now, how do you argue for that? It's only a question of going into so many scientific explanations of near-death experiences. One of the perfect example is a neurologist who had some sort of a meningitis, went into a coma, and he talks about seeing so many beautiful experiences of God and the heavens and people who are moving around with beyond this language limitations of language and concepts, but he talks about supreme experiences beyond body, but they have had it in their body. So, my dear friends, when you really try to understand the mystery of resurrection, which we celebrate today, it is very important that without knowing, without having a sense of the mystery of the human body, that you and I will never be able to fully understand it. But the more we get into the mystery of the human body, the more we study that, the more we reflect on it, the more we have insights into the mystery of the body, the mystery of human resurrection from the death becomes not an impossibility, but a possibility. Now, if you are to believe in this, of course we have to have the eyes of faith, but it is not only eyes of faith, but at least if you have the eyes of reason, then we can begin a journey into the unspeakable truth of the presence of something that is way beyond our body. So now in the life of Jesus Christ, he was the Son of God. Of course, the theology tells us, scripture tells us, but when you look at it from the understanding of the kind of life he lived, here was a man who lived his life completely beyond his body limitations. A man who found that inner unconsciousness, because in the life of Jesus, in his own life experience, he had this tremendous capacity to connect with the source of life. He talks about the union with the Father. So the source of life, which is, in terms of the psychology, the unconsciousness, the depth of one's soul, the depth of the human psyche, the depth of the cosmos, the more you connected with that part of you, the more capacity you have in your lifetime to heal yourself, not only heal yourself, but also heal others. Because you need to tap that energy, tap that potentiality within you to do wonders of life. So if Jesus' life is an example of tapping that energy during his lifetime, you leave aside his thinking, leave aside his struggles, but what you can see in a very clear way is that here was a man who lived from the depth of his soul, depth of his unconsciousness, depth of that energy. And so therefore, that energy, you may not like to call it God, depending on your experience of your faith or whatever the religion you belong to. But one thing is possible. Here was a man who tapped into the sources, the recesses of his inner unconsciousness, experienced the power of that energy in his own life by healing others. He transferred that energy to others. And then at the end of his life, after the supreme sacrifice of his own life for the values he believed in, values that he upheld, then that energy had taken him to this life. So for us, my dear friends, we can make it an argument for existence of God or existence of non-existence of God. But one thing very clear is that if you have a life that is a physical entity which has the containment of the unconsciousness, the deeper recesses of one's own inner self, the resurrection is a possibility, not an impossibility. Amen. Anyway, as we celebrate the day of the resurrection, let me wish each and every one of you a meaningful Easter, where all of us, in spite of the outbreak of the pandemic, that we may find time to go into our own inner selves, tap the unconsciousness, the energy that is within us, so that we may begin a journey of resurrection here and now through our words and actions, which are connected and committed to the well-being of others. Thank you.